After I paid my sister's rent for 6 months, she called me just a backup plan at the family dinner. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door begging for another favor. I've always been the responsible one in my family. That's code for the one who gets shit done while everyone else sits around with their hand out. Growing up, I busted my ass through high school working weekends while Cheryl, 29F, got to focus on her potential. My mom Evelyn, 58F, always had a special place in her heart for her baby girl, while I, 32M, was expected to just figure it out. Let me paint the picture for you guys. I started at the bottom, literal dirt under my fingernails every day, and worked my way up. Meanwhile, Cheryl bounced between 3 different colleges, never finishing a single degree, burning through my money and my mom's retirement saving. And we're not talking small amounts here. I calculated exactly how much I've loaned, aka given, because she never pays back a single cent, over the past decade. First semester at fancy private college, $3,874.22 car insurance. After her third fender bender, $2,103.50 credit card debt from her 25th birthday shopping spree, $1,798.44 trip to Florida with friends she couldn't afford, $2,237.63 new laptop because her perfectly fine one wasn't fast enough, $1,349.99 emergency dental work, the one legitimate expense, $875 moving expenses x4 because she can't keep roommates, $3,950 random emergencies that were actually festival tickets, $7,078.11, and the most recent masterpiece, 6 months of her ridiculous rent at $1,450 per month, $8,700. That's $31,966.89 over 9 fucking years. 10 years of my life, pissing money away to someone who has never held a job longer than 3 months. And why? Because family helps family. And she's going through a rough patch. And my personal favorite, she just hasn't found her passion yet, at 29 years old. So anyway, the breaking point happened exactly 13 days ago, April 22nd, 2025. Mom and Silvio, 61M stepdad, invited us all for Sunday dinner. Bonnie, 31F, my girlfriend of 4 years, couldn't make it because she had to cover someone's shift. Thank God she wasn't there to witness this shit show. Actually, I wish she had been there because she's been telling me for years that Cheryl was using me. I showed up at 5:37 p.m. I remember checking my phone in the driveway because I was already dreading this. Cheryl's car was there, and so was her friend Zara's, 28F. I was already annoyed because family dinner was supposed to be, family, but Cheryl always brings randoms without asking. And then I walked into the kitchen to grab a beer from the fridge. The sliding door to the patio was cracked open, and I could hear Cheryl and Zara outside smoking. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name. I'm not normally one to eavesdrop, but something in her tone made me freeze, and that's when I heard the words that have been playing on repeat in my brain. Ezra's just my backup plan when I'm in a bind. He's so pathetic with his family-first bullshit. Just have to turn on the waterworks, and he forks over whatever I need. Orlando was my real plan until he dumped me. Then they both laughed, like it was the funniest fucking joke they'd ever heard. Do you guys know what it feels like when your blood literally boils? When you can feel your heartbeat in your eyeballs? I stood there for maybe 30 seconds trying to process what I just heard. I've been paying this parasite's rent for 6 months because she told me she was about to be homeless after Orlando, 30M, broke up with her. I gave her $8,700 that I was saving for a down payment on a house with Bonnie. So I did what any rational human would do. I stepped outside and went fucking nuclear. I won't bore you with the exact play-by-play, but I basically laid out every single penny I'd given her over the years. I had the receipts, too. I've always tracked my expenses in a spreadsheet. Bonnie teases me about it, but who's laughing now? Cheryl immediately started the waterworks, exactly like she just admitted to doing, claiming I misunderstood, and she was just venting. And then Mom and Silvio came outside to see what the commotion was. And you know what? Mom instantly took Cheryl's side. She literally put her arm around Cheryl while she fake sobbed and told me I was overreacting and taking things out of context. I looked Cheryl dead in the eyes and told her no more. No more money, no more safety net, no more anything from me. And Zara couldn't even look at me, just stared at her shoes like they were the most fascinating things she'd ever seen. Mom tried to tell me that sisters say mean things sometimes, and I should be the bigger person. Silvio didn't say much. He never does when it comes to family drama, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. Probably because he's the only one besides me who actually works for a living and understands what $31,966.89 actually means. I grabbed my keys and left. Didn't even stay for dinner. Mom called 7 times that night. I didn't answer. The next day at 11:43 p.m., I got a text from Sean, 33M, my best friend since middle school. Dude, did you have a blowout with Cheryl? She's been trash-talking you to anyone who'll listen. So I called him. And that's when I learned that Cheryl has been bragging about manipulating me for years. Sean said he tried to tell me before, but I always defended her. He was right. I've been a fucking doormat. For the past 2 weeks, I've been adding up every cent I've given her. Not just the big stuff, but every dinner I paid for, every small loan that was never repaid, every time I covered a bill because she was a little short this month. The real total is closer to $35K. I keep thinking about all the things I could have done with that money, all the experiences I missed out on, the vacations I couldn't take Bonnie on, the house we still don't have. Meanwhile, Cheryl has brand name everything, gets her nails done weekly, and hasn't worked since February. And here's the kicker. 2 days ago, my phone starts blowing up with texts from Cheryl. Hey bro, miss you. Can we talk? Family shouldn't fight. I've been thinking about what you said. Are you free tomorrow? I need some advice. I haven't responded to any of them. I know what's coming. Her rent is due in 3 days. Orlando isn't taking her back. Mom and Silvio already said they couldn't help this month. I'm her backup plan, remember? So now I'm just waiting for her to show up at my door with the fake tears and the sob story. And you know what? I want her to come. Because I've had 2 weeks to plan exactly how I'm going to make her regret every fucking word she said. The old Ezra would have forgiven her. The old Ezra would have written another check just to help her get back on her feet. But that Ezra is dead. He died the moment he heard his sister laugh about manipulating him. The new Ezra? He's ready to watch her squirm. The new Ezra is going to make her work for even a crumb of help. And then, at the last possible second, the new Ezra is going to remind her exactly what she said about her pathetic brother and his family-first bullshit. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd enjoy watching someone suffer. But when that someone has spent a decade bleeding you dry while laughing behind your back, yeah, I'm going to enjoy every fucking second of it. Revenge isn't a dish best served cold. It's best served with receipts. Update 1. First of all, thank you for all the comments on my last post. I didn't expect so many people to relate to having a parasite for a sibling. For those asking if I caved when Cheryl showed up, hell no, this is just getting started. So Cheryl arrived exactly when I knew she would, 3 days before rent was due, May 15th at 10:23 a.m., and yes, I checked my smart doorbell timestamp. I'd spent the 2 weeks since the dinner ignoring a total of 37 texts from Cheryl 19, calls from Mom, 4 voicemails from Silvio asking me to be reasonable, 1 extremely awkward Instagram DM from Zara trying to apologize I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. I took my sweet-ass time answering it because 1, fuck her, and 2, I wanted her standing awkwardly on my doorstep thinking about her life choices. When I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was her eyes were already red and puffy. The Waterworks pre-game was in full effect before she even saw my face. She was carrying her stupid designer bag that probably cost more than my monthly car payment while claiming she couldn't afford rent. The audacity of this woman. She immediately launched into how much she missed me and some BS about a misunderstanding. I just stared at her. No smile, no hug, no invite inside. After like a full minute of this one-sided conversation, she finally got to the point. She needed $4,300 to cover rent and utility, or she'd be evicted on Monday. $4,300. Not just the $1,450 rent I'd been paying, but almost 3 times that amount. When I asked why the sudden increase, she mumbled something about late fees and back utilities, and then tried to change the subject to how Mom was worried about me. So here's where my plan kicked in. Instead of telling her to fuck off, which is what my brain was screaming, I invited her in. Her whole demeanor changed, relief washing over her face, as she probably thought good old reliable Ezra was back. I made her sit at my kitchen table and told her that before we discussed money, I needed to understand her exact financial situation. I pulled out a notebook and started asking questions. How much was her actual rent? $1,450. How much were the late fees? $725. How much were the utilities? $387.22. What about the remaining $1,737.78? That's when she started squirming. Turns out, she also needed to pay off her credit card minimum payment, some online shopping she did last week, and money she borrowed from a coworker. The coworker part was definitely a lie. She hasn't had a job since February. I wrote everything down in excruciating detail, asking follow-up questions that made her trip over her own lies. By the end, she was contradicting herself every other sentence. The back utilities were actually just regular utilities she decided not to pay for 3 months because she was spending the money on DoorDash and Sephora hauls. And then I smiled and told her I'd consider helping. Her face lit up like a fucking Christmas tree. But there were conditions. I told her I'd need daily check-ins about her job search, with screenshots of every application submitted. I explained that I'd be coming with her in person to apply at fast food places and retail stores that she considers beneath her. I mentioned that I'd signed her up for financial literacy classes. I actually did this, paid $89.99 for an online course. And finally, I said I'd need a detailed breakdown of how she spent every dollar I'd previously given her. The look on her face was priceless, like she'd been slapped with a wet fish. She started with the usual excuses. That's not fair. I don't have time for classes. Those jobs don't pay enough. Blah, blah, blah. So I pulled out my phone and showed her my checking account balance. $12,463.53. More than enough to solve her problem. Then I switched to my savings account, showing the down payment fund Bonnie and I had been building. $38,216.77. Money that would be higher if I hadn't been bankrolling her life. I explained very calmly, while internally raging, that my money now came with strings. Big, uncomfortable, humiliating strings. She could either accept my terms or find someone else to mooch off of. After she left, agreeing to my terms while practically choking on her pride, I messaged Orlando. We weren't friends or anything, but I had his number from a group text a while back. I asked if we could grab a beer and talk about Cheryl. 2 days later, at this local dive bar, Orlando spilled everything. Cheryl had been using his credit card without permission. She'd been lying about job interviews. The kicker? She'd been selling expensive gifts I'd bought her over the years on Poshmark and Facebook Marketplace. The watch I got her for her 25th birthday sold for $340. The tablet I bought when she said she needed it for online classes? Gone for $230. I asked for receipts, and boy did he deliver. Screenshots of her selling my gift, texts where she bragged about manipulating me, even a video from a party where she joked about being professionally unemployed thanks to her sucker brother. The video made my blood boil so hot, I thought I might black out. Then I reached out to Zara, who was drowning in guilt. She sent me pages of text conversations where Cheryl explicitly laid out her strategy for getting money from me. Turns out the whole Orlando breakup was because he dumped her after discovering she was cheating, not the sob story about him not being ready for commitment that she told me when begging for rent money. While all this was happening, Cheryl was actually following my conditions. She sent daily updates, half-hearted at best, about job applications. She attended exactly one financial literacy webinar before claiming she had technical issues with the rest. She even went with me to apply at 3 different places, looking absolutely miserable in her designer sunglasses while filling out applications for cashier positions. The psychological torture was working. Each day she got more desperate as her landlord's deadline approached. Each day her texts got more frantic, asking when I would make a decision about helping her. On day 5, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She spent 45 minutes telling me I was being cruel, that family helps family, that Cheryl was really trying to change. I calmly suggested that if she was so concerned, she could pay Cheryl's $4,300. Suddenly, it was all about how she was on a fixed income, and Silvio's medical bills were expensive. Funny how family helps family only applies when I'm the one helping. Even Bonnie was getting concerned. Not about Cheryl, but about me. One night, while we were making dinner, she asked if my revenge plan was consuming too much of my mental energy. Maybe she was right. But you know what? I was enjoying this. For once, I wasn't the sucker being taken advantage of. For once, Cheryl was squirming instead of smugly counting my money. The day before her eviction deadline, I told Cheryl I'd made a decision. I would pay her rent, but only the base rent of $1,450, directly to her landlord, not to her. And there was one final condition. She needed to post a public apology on her Instagram, where she has like 3,000 followers, acknowledging that she had taken advantage of me for years and was now facing the consequences. She lost her shit. She called me psycho, manipulative, cruel, all the things she'd been to me for years. Then, as her deadline closed in and reality set in, her tone changed. She became desperate, agreeing to discuss the Instagram post, but begging me to at least pay the rent portion immediately. I told her no post, no money, period. At 11:47 p.m. the night before her eviction, my phone pinged with an Instagram notification. There it was, a carefully worded post that technically met my requirements, while trying to make her look as good as possible. It wasn't the public flogging I'd hoped for, but seeing I've taken advantage of my brother's generosity for years in black and white was something. I took screenshots before she could delete it later, and then messaged her. I'd pay only the base rent tomorrow. The rest, her credit card, her shopping addiction, her borrowed money, was her problem. The next morning, I called her landlord directly, and that's when I discovered something interesting. Her rent wasn't $1,450. It was $1,225. She'd been padding the number for months, pocketing the extra $225 every single time I paid. That was the moment I decided to take this from painful to nuclear. Now I'm sitting on all this evidence: the video, the texts, the screenshots, the financial records, the proof of her selling my gifts, and now this rent scam. Tomorrow, I'm gathering the entire family for what they think is a reconciliation dinner. It's not. It's an execution. To be continued. Update 2. Holy shit, you guys. The nuclear option feels even better than I imagined. Sorry for the delay in posting. The aftermath has been intense, and I needed time to process everything. For those asking if I followed through with my plan, let's just say Cheryl is no longer viewing me as her personal ATM. Grab some popcorn. This is a wild ride. I spent the entire day before the family dinner setting everything up, printed all the evidence, cost me $46.78 in ink and paper, but worth it, created a PowerPoint with screenshots, photos, and a complete breakdown of the $32,467.89 I'd loaned Cheryl over the years. Got Bonnie to help me organize everything in a binder with those little plastic tabs. I was so fucking ready. The weirdest part? I slept like a baby the night before. No tossing and turning, no second thoughts, just the peaceful sleep of someone about to deliver long overdue justice. I reserved a private room at this local restaurant, cost $200 for the space, but again, worth it. Told everyone we were having a family meeting to resolve tensions and move forward as a family. Mom was thrilled, thinking her precious children were reconciling. Silvio seemed suspicious but went along with it. Cheryl looked nervous AF, but probably thought I was going to announce I'd help with her financial problem. I also invited Sean, who knew the real plan, Zara, who agreed to come out of guilt, and even Orlando, who was all in on exposing Cheryl. Bonnie came for moral support and to record everything on her phone for posterity, and in case anyone tried to twist what happened later. Everyone arrived around 7 p.m. There was this weird, tense energy as we ordered drinks and appetizers. Mom kept trying to force conversation, while Cheryl avoided eye contact with literally everyone. Orlando, sitting across from her, was making her visibly uncomfortable, which was a nice appetizer to the main course of humiliation I had planned. After the food arrived, I stood up and thanked everyone for coming to this important family meeting. Mom smiled so wide I thought her face might split in half. Then I pulled out my binder, and the real fun began. I started with a simple statement. I had decided how to handle Cheryl's financial situation once and for all. Mom clapped her hands like a fucking seal. Cheryl perked up. Silvio just looked tired. Then I dropped the first bomb. I wasn't giving Cheryl a single penny ever again for anything. The smile fell off Mom's face so fast it was almost comical. Cheryl started with the waterworks immediately, but I was just getting started. I placed the binder on the table and began going through it systematically. First, the complete record of all money loaned to Cheryl over the years, organized by date, amount, and alleged purpose. I'd even included inflation calculation, showing that in today's dollars, I'd given her closer to $35K. Then came the evidence section. I played the video Orlando had of Cheryl at a party calling me her sucker brother while bragging about being professionally unemployed. The looks around the table were priceless. Mom tried to interrupt, but Silvio put his hand on her arm to stop her. Next, I showed the screenshots from Zara of all the texts where Cheryl explicitly discussed her strategy for manipulating me. Zara looked at the floor the entire time, but confirmed everything was authentic when Silvio asked. Then I projected the Poshmark and Facebook Marketplace listings where Cheryl had sold gifts I'd bought her. The $870 watch I got her for her 25th birthday that she claimed to treasure, but sold for $340. The tablet she needed for online classes that was gone within a week. The designer bag I bought her last Christmas that she listed literally the next day. But the grand finale was the rent scam. I pulled out the records from her landlord showing her actual rent was $225 less than what she'd been telling me. Multiplied by 6 months, she'd scammed an extra $1,350 from me on top of the rent I was already paying. The entire time I was presenting this evidence, Cheryl cycled through every emotional manipulation tactic in her arsenal. Crying, denial, claiming things were taken out of context, even tried to storm out at one point, but Sean was blocking the exit, not physically, just sitting there, but she'd have had to climb over him, and even she wasn't that dramatic. When I finished, the table was dead silent. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in an hour. Silvio was just staring at Cheryl with this expression of pure disappointment. Orlando and Zara were awkwardly looking at their phones. Bonnie was still recording everything. Then I unveiled the final part of my plan, a legally binding document my buddy helped me draft. He works in legal. It stated that Cheryl acknowledged her debt of $32,467.89 to me and agreed to repay it in monthly installments of $300. If she missed even one payment, I would be entitled to any property of hers equal to the remaining balance. I slid the document across the table and told her she had 2 options: sign it, acknowledge her debt, and start repaying me. Never ask me for another cent as long as she lived. Mom finally found her voice and started in with how I was being cruel, and this wasn't how family treated each other. That's when Silvio shocked everyone by telling her to be quiet. He said he'd been watching this pattern for years and had tried to warn her, but she never listened. He told Cheryl she'd brought this on herself. Cheryl's face, when her safety net completely unraveled in front of her, was something I'll remember forever. It was like watching someone realize they had absolutely no power anymore. No leverage, no manipulation tactics left. She tried one last desperate move, claiming she'd take the document home and think about it. I told her this was a one-time offer. Either sign now or the Bank of Ezra was permanently closed. After 15 minutes of crying, bargaining, and trying to get Mom to intervene, which didn't work thanks to Silvio, she finally signed it, with the shakiest signature I've ever seen. The aftermath has been exactly what you'd expect. Mom has been blowing up my phone daily, alternating between guilt-tripping and begging me to help your sister just this once. I've blocked her number twice, but she keeps using different phones. Cheryl had to move out of her fancy apartment within a week. She couldn't afford the $1,225 rent, let alone the back utilities and late fees. She's now living in a shitty studio apartment in the sketchy part of town that costs $750/month. Her Instagram posts have suddenly stopped showing brunches and shopping hauls, and now it's all aesthetic photos of ramen noodles and sunset views from her tiny window. She got a job at a fast food place. Ironically, one of the places I made her apply to during my psychological torture phase. When I last heard from Sean, who drove through there, she was working the drive-thru, looking absolutely miserable. She hasn't made a single payment on the agreement yet. I'm not even going to enforce it. The document was more for the psychological impact than anything else. Watching her squirm as she signed it was payment enough. Some family members have reached out to tell me I went too far, that I destroyed Cheryl. My response? She destroyed herself. I just stopped providing the safety net that enabled her bullshit. 3 months later, my life is so much better without the constant drain of Cheryl's urgencies. Bonnie and I have added another $5,400 to our house down payment fund. What would have been Cheryl's rent for those months? We're looking at properties next weekend. I saw Cheryl at the grocery store last week. She was counting coins to pay for ramen and store-brand cereal. She pretended not to see me. I pretended the same. 6 months after the dinner, she sent me a long text about how sorry she was and how she'd really changed and learned her lesson. Asked if we could start rebuilding our relationship. I didn't respond. The funny thing is, I don't even feel angry anymore. Just free from the obligation, the manipulation, the constant financial drain, free from being someone's backup plan. Mom still thinks I'll come around eventually. Silvio seems to understand and has actually reached out separately to grab beers a few times. He admitted he should have stepped in years ago. For those wondering if I'll ever forgive Cheryl or help her again, hell no. Some bridges don't get rebuilt. Some people don't deserve second chances. The fact that she's facing real consequences for perhaps the first time in her adult life isn't my problem. Bonnie and I close on our new house next month. We're having a housewarming party. Guess who's not invited? The entire family. Some might call this cruel. I call it boundary. Setting them late is better than never setting them at all.